Welcome to Beyond Dragondom, from wherever you are listening to today. The weekly episode channel for fantasy adventure stories. My name is Lesley. I am the author, the creator, and the narrator of Tales from Dragondom and Beyond, and Aisha's adventures through quantum time and space. Aisha Portal to Dragondom is the first in the series. I hope you enjoy the episodes as much as I enjoy writing them. If you are listening to me on my YouTube or podcast platforms and would like to leave a like, or would like to know automatically when the next weekly episode is live, I understand you can do this by pressing the follow. Shall we join Aisha now and her friends in her adventures in Dragondom and beyond? Episode 7. The Wizard Dralinmer. We landed on a small hill about the ancient forest in a part of Dragondom, a short flight from the staging zone where we were staying with Sartina and her young charges. It felt good to be back with Little One, my purple dragon friend. We had both enjoyed our flight together. Now, as Milana dismounted from the Emerald Dragon, we took our leave and started walking down the hillside, looking back to watch the two beautiful dragons once more take to the wing. The seer looked me up and down. "Oh dear," he said, and tutted. "Child, you keep morphing in and out. Didn't you learn anything in school?" I'm not sure which of your fractals I am addressing, nor which is addressing me. Very disturbing. Highly irregular. Dear, dear. If one of you would stay in focus long enough, we could converse. I felt myself redden with embarrassment. I hadn't thought that this might happen. I wasn't used to being seen when I ventured into other dimensions. This was the first time, as far as I knew, that I had totally, physically gone into another realm. I heard a cough that sounded as though it was stifling a giggle. Wise one, I don't think Aisha's human aspect has ever had such wondrous teaching and training as you give. In fact, I would think that maybe she was unaware of what happens, especially when one is nervous. Ah, yes. Now stop that, Milana. You are trying to confuse an old man. Stop trying to be in her and where you are. He stopped suddenly and looked very closely at me. His ice blue eyes seemed to bore right into me. Not my head and my mind, but into my very soul. "Oh," he said, and then smiled. "I see I am actually in the presence of the one who was prophesied, the one who released our beloved Milana and her emerald dragon, the earthling, by Zorgon, who had to claim her last fractal so we could all move forward." And he laughed. He laughed out loud, a deep, full-bellied roar of glee. It was as if the entire tree, for he lived within a giant ancient tree, was rocking and vibrating with the sound, as if it too was laughing. I looked over my shoulder at Milana, and she was smiling. She came forward and put her hand on my shoulder. "Aisha, he likes you. Don't be afraid. His bark has always been worse than his bite." Her reassuring words played like a lullaby in my mind, and while the echoing jollity continued, I quietly looked around at things moving on their own, as if by magic. Books and dusty manuscripts seemed to dance with bottles of goodness knows what. The spiders' webs looked as though they were being played like harp strings by their 8-legged occupants. Creatures that I had not noticed before seemed to be joining in from corner and crevice. The old wooden pail with a broken handle seemed to vibrate across the floor. Then, as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. The old wizard, seer, was still bubbling with mirth, but now in his mind only. Tears glistened on his ruddy cheeks, and his ice-blue eyes still twinkled. A warm smile crossed his thin lips. Well, I see we have much to accomplish before the great meeting. Am I not correct, Princess? Quite a task indeed. But for Aisha having gotten this far, the bonding and the melding of other fractals and the human form must have been completed well. So we only have to tweak a little and teach a lot. So, young ladies, where to start? He paused as if thinking. Ah, yes. Come on, out of the way. The table wishes to take its place, and you two are in the way. This will never do. Good help is hard to find, so shoo! Move! We both did, and just in time, for the table landed where we had been only seconds before. It simply came out of thin air. I could vaguely hear him mumbling in my head, and listened to it a little closer. No, not tea and cakes. That will never do. They need some strength. I think some of last night's stew. Yes, stew and a goblet of Mr. Wintermouse's special mead. And bread that is hot and tasty, not hard as a rock. Bread to dip and scrape the juices from the plate. He looked at us and smiled and rolled his eyes. No, I want it now, without delay, or you will be finding other lodgings before midday. He cleared his throat, and we both looked at him. Right then, my young friends, let us eat and plan how we do this job we must complete. To me, in words spoken, not thought transferred, he said, Come, eat while it is still hot. We have work to do. I turned, and there the table was no longer bare, but laid and full of bowls and spoons, a large cast-iron cauldron, or stock-pot, and 3 goblets of sweet-smelling liquid. None of this had been there a few seconds ago. Now, out of thin air, he also appeared sitting opposite me. I started slightly and glanced across at Milana, who was looking down into her lap and smiling. He was watching me for my reaction, still with a smile, yet those eyes had changed. The eyes were clear and penetrating, no longer laughing, but looking to see if I, Aisha, was true and ready. At that moment I knew I was in for a rough ride. I wanted to be back at home in the oldie-worldy cottage, or sat down within the ancient stone circle, not here, wherever here really was. Child, there is no going back. You chose, accepted this path eons ago. So far you have remembered and passed every test, so let us prepare you for the next. Look at it as a game. Once a level has been mastered, you move on. If you fail, you simply repeat until you master it. The fact you have come in the full physical form we can work with. There is nothing to fear but fear itself. This time he gently touched my hand across the table. I felt my fear melt, and I was back in control and looking straight into those ice-blue pools that were his eyes. Come, eat, drink, and then let us take you to one of my special places, and let you glimpse the past, the present, and the future in multi-dimensions, all at once and without the need to move an atom from Dragondom. And so my education had begun. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode and will join me again, Lesley Laws, at Beyond Dragondom, either on podcast or YouTube, for another weekly episode of Aisha Portal to Dragondom. And so from me, for now, I wish you all goodbye.